Welcome to Just Break Up, the podcast about love, heartbreak, and all the relationship advice you don't want to hear. My name is Sierra DeMulder.
And I'm Sam Blackwell. And today we're going to answer a letter from somebody who is wondering if her deal breakers should be deal breakers. But before we begin, we just want to give you our Surgeon General's warning, which is that Sierra and I are not licensed mental health practitioners.
No, we are not professionals. We are barely scraping by ourselves. And these are just our opinions. So please take our humble... Wait, where am I going with this?
Our advice as you see fit.
Yeah, there we go. We're barely scraping by ourselves. So please take our advice as you see fit. We're only here to offer our humble musings to hopefully shed some understanding and maybe some advice. Nope. And maybe some laughs about the incredibly rewarding but mostly confusing experience that is love. How many times have I said that intro and I just like fumbled it 400 times?
It's fine. We're not professionals, you know?
No. Yeah. All right. So before we dive into today's letter, it's Monday. So we're going to do a quick check-in topic that is also inspired by a letter writer whose name is Eternally Fucked, who is writing to us from their own private island, whose pronouns are she, her. And they write, okay, this might be more of a check-in topic, but my question is, how do I stop being so awkward around people I like in more than just a friends kind of way? I'm a 23-year-old female and still find myself awkward as fuck around guys I like, to the point where I would rather just avoid them at all costs than actually talk to them and get to know them. And then she goes on to, divulge a brief dating history, but notes that she is now 10 months sober, congrats, and has never really had a relationship that didn't involve some kind of substance, and that like that liquid courage is now gone, and that I don't know, ease into social interactions is gone. And she writes, is there a reason I'm this way around people I'm interested in? Is there a way to work against it? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, how do you be less awkward around people that you like, Sam?
Oh, I don't.
Are you awkward?
I don't know.
No, you. Sam's an excellent flirt, I think.
Oh, thank you so much. It's called just being mean to the person that you like.
If you were flirting with me, like the being mean to me thing doesn't work.
I know it doesn't. No, I think that I actually am a good flirt. You
are.
And I don't think I'm actually mean to people, but like,
no, you're coy and you toy with them.
Yeah, absolutely. I tease a little bit. Yeah.
And
like, but I'm not like mean. I'm not like, oh my God, why are you like this?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that it's really normal to feel awkward around people that you like, because like the stakes feel so much higher than just like hanging out and interacting with friends. Cause it's like, oh, I got to prove something, or I gotta make this person like me. And that of course is like, I think a lot of people really struggle with feeling awkward around people because of that. And like, I think that the one thing of advice that I would give to anyone who's like, oh my God, I'm so awkward all the time, is the advice that my friend Jake gave me like 10 years ago, which is that awkward doesn't exist. Like, he just decided one day that he wasn't going to call himself awkward or call situations awkward. And he was just going to like accept all situations as being just like fine and normal and understandable. And at the time, I was in my early 20s, I think, when he told me this. I was like, you can't possibly think that's true. Like, you can't possibly think that awkward doesn't exist, because I was like living my life plagued with feeling awkward all the time. I was like, oh my God, I'm doing this. And like, everyone's like, what is this person doing?
Doing it wrong.
This is so awkward. Oh my God, why am I like this? And then like a couple years after he told me that, I was like, oh, wait a minute. I can just like live my life and not like be worried about whether or not people think I'm being weird or uncomfortable or awkward. And I can just be like, part of the other thing too is that I had to realize that like awkward took two to tango. Like, it wasn't just like me coming into a situation and being like, oh my God.
That's so poignantly true.
And this is still hard for me sometimes, because like I have a hard time making small talk with people. And sometimes I'll just like sit with the person and be like, oh my God, I'm so bad at this. I'm so bad at this. And then I remind myself, the other person is not talking either.
Yeah.
Like, this isn't just like a me trying to figure this out. It's like, this situation is uncomfortable because like, I think maybe both of us are uncomfortable. So that's how I kind of worked through my initial phases of being like, why am I the most awkward person on the planet? Why do I make every situation uncomfortable? Was just to remind myself like, A, I'm not, because that doesn't exist. I'm just existing in the world and nothing about that is awkward.
Right.
And 2, it takes 2 to tango. Like other people are also feeling uncomfortable or feeling awkward. And that's why this situation is the way that it is. Not just because I'm like coming in and being like making everyone uncomfortable. Like it just is a situation where 2 people are trying to figure out how to be in space with each other. I
think that's great. I would add to that like the way I think about, feeling nervous or awkward around people, that there are like band-aids for that, like, oh, practice what you're going to say about them beforehand. Take deep breaths, I don't know. Like there are band-aids to make social interactions easier. And then there's like one thing that will make long-lasting changes. And unfortunately, that's your relationship to yourself, right? Like I wish it wasn't true. I wish it wasn't so cliche, but I think why we become awkward is that we are exploring the vulnerabilities of like being rejected by this person, or like having them see our quote true selves, or making we get awkward because we don't want to make the wrong choice or the wrong move, or we don't want to act wrong, which inherently says we are wrong, or there's a possibility that we could be wrong. And so it's all rooted in the idea of the other person's acceptance of us, and if you say to yourself like, well, I love myself, or hell, maybe it's today, it's like, I like myself and I'm just going to try to be myself around this person. And if they make it weird, or if I'm not acting perfectly around them, or if they can't meet me where I'm at, then like their opinion of me or how this social interaction goes cannot touch my unshakable sense of loyalty to myself, my sense of self, my sense of self-love. I know that like sounds a little hippie, but I was thinking about it while I was prepping for this episode, and I was like, there's a bunch of band-aids, there's a bunch of like social tools or like little practices that I can apply to like making myself feel less awkward. But underneath it all is saying, I love myself whether or not this person accepts me, and I'm just going to go there and be authentically myself, because there's nothing at risk to show my true self. Yeah. Because their rejection of it can't touch my love for myself. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It really is just, I learned that a lot from my sister, actually, where she did a lot of like self-work, and she realized like, she goes into social situations with like a fuck it attitude. Like, I'm going to be myself. Fuck it. Like, not fuck these people, but like, for real, I have nothing to lose here because I have myself sort of idea. And that's way like, to the letter writer who's 23, I could not do that at 23. I can barely do that right now at 38. Oh my God, I can't believe I'm 38. But, so this is a taller order than like, practice what you're going to say to them beforehand, but it's the truth, right? It's the real fix under the band-aids of this. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's really understandable and normal to feel this way. I don't think that you're like uniquely fucked up in not knowing how to talk to people that you like. Like, talking to people that you like is hard because you're risking rejection, and you are, it's vulnerable for sure.
Yeah, the world is awkward. Awkward isn't real, but also the world is awkward, right?
It's either like awkward isn't real or everyone is awkward.
Yeah, like yeah. It's both. It's yes and, Sam.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, we hope that this helps. Sorry for the random rambling / rants about our awkwardness. I don't think we offered you any like specific tools, but we did offer a worldview change, which I think is what we go for on this podcast.
And let me say this. I just had an epiphany too, which is like the times in which I have felt the most awkward around people. Years later, I saw that they were not safe spaces for me. Like, they were not good people for me. I didn't feel at ease. I couldn't access the love I had for myself around them because I felt like I constantly had to be something else.
That's real. Yep.
And so I would just add a little addendum to this and say, like, is it telling you something? It might not be, but it might be telling you something that you feel awkward around these people that you like about them and not about you. Like, you deserve to be around somebody that, like, you feel
Makes
like
you feel at ease,
authentic.
Yeah.
But that's different for everybody. Like, I don't have a ton of social anxiety in that way, so that might just have been my situation. But I think it's worth noting, right?
For sure. Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. So this letter is from Cold and Selfish Bitch, which, to be clear, you're not. Just want to get that
I love that title.
out of the way.
I love that title.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to get that out of the way first so that we're not doing anything we don't want to be doing. Whose pronouns are she, her, who is writing from Lazy Town. Hi, Sam, Sierra, and Spencer. I started listening to the podcast after Spotify randomly recommended it to me after a breakup. The algorithm clearly picking up on all those breakup playlists. I'm so glad I listened. It's the only podcast I've listened to for years and years, and I'm obsessed. The only time I've stopped listening to it is when I knew I needed to end my last relationship, but didn't want to admit it to myself. And listening to
This is not the first time we have read that in a letter, which I love.
We get that all the time. And listening to your podcast made me feel those feelings rather than letting me avoid them. LOL. So sorry for taking a few months off there. You were right. Just breaking up was the right solution. Or was it? I'm asking her for help. Okay, so the question. I've only ever dated 3 people and been the breaker-upper in each one. The relationships were good and bad for different reasons and overall positive. But for each, after a year or two, I felt like they were no longer the one. Sometimes the feelings were sudden and strong, and I'd ruminate for a bit before breaking up. Sometimes the feelings were slow and creepy, and I'd ruminate on and try to ignore them a little bit before breaking up. Different reasons for each one, but these people all had the same response. I'm cold and heartless. I didn't try hard enough. I'm selfish. Can we work it out if I give them a chance, etc.? I'm wondering if I'm a cold, lazy, heartless bitch. Don't immediately be kind to me. Hear me out. We'll hear you out, but also we're going to be kind to you. When I notice something
mean.
No. When I notice something I don't like about someone I'm dating, I don't try to change it. I don't argue beyond a point unless it's worth arguing about. Happy to agree to disagree. I just kind of mentally note it. And then when there's enough stuff, that scales kind of tip. And I'm like, yeah, this person is not the one. For example, a person who is very argumentative and started fights with our friends for, in my opinion, no good reason. I spoke to them about potentially avoiding these situations. No. I spoke to them about potentially approaching these situations differently. They didn't change. I didn't try to make them change, just felt like it was very unattractive and felt a little less in love with them. Another example, I won an award they didn't win. I found out later they're actually not proud of me, but feel butthurt about it. And we argued about it once, and the conclusion was that, yeah, they feel butthurt about it. I didn't like that, but it didn't bother continuing to argue, just fell out of love a bit. Another example, we had different family cultures. By this, I mean their dogs slept in their beds. They live a life of clutter and mess. They love the idea of a big, drunk, messy wedding. They want to live in the countryside, but I don't want dogs in the bed. I like clear and clean kitchen countertops. Toaster in the cupboard, please. My family don't drink. I want to be in the city. I never argued with their wants and ideas, but said I prefer things a different way. They said we'd work it out. I just broke up with them. Because of dogs and beds, and also because of other reasons. This person believed feminists were bad until I partially successfully taught them otherwise. How embarrassing for me, but also, is that worth breaking up with someone about? Should I try harder to make it work? Try harder to get through the tough patches? Am I selfish? How much evidence that they're not your person is enough evidence before breaking up? How much stuff is it possible to compromise on and still be happy together? I do not like them at all as people, but if I gave them more opportunity to try harder, could we make it work? I love that. I don't like them at all as people, but like, could we be in a relationship together? The biggest question, I don't warn them before breaking up. I just do it. How the fuck are you supposed to warn someone that you're falling out of love with them because of their behavior or opinions? I don't want to change them. They should stay who they are and I stay who I am, right? I will find someone who doesn't want to sleep with a dog in the bed, right? I should try harder, or should I compromise? They say I'm not trying hard enough and that I'm a cold, selfish bitch, but I don't want them to try harder to be proud of me for winning an award. I just want to date someone who is naturally, as their first instinct, proud of me. Is this mindset my problem? Should I be more flexible? I hope this isn't creepy, but love and appreciate you all. I know I'm a stranger and parasocial relationships aren't real, but you have absolutely undeniably improved the quality of my life, and I am grateful. Lots of love, a cold, selfish, lazy, never happy enough, never considers other people bitch. I've been called all these things and much worse, and I think it has really affected me because I'm scared of what will happen if I break up with someone again. Okay, love you, bye.
Thank you so much for writing and for everything you shared and said. I am so honored to have the opportunity to affirm you. Because I think the world actually needs more people like you in it. It sounds like to me that you are making this decision thoughtfully and in alignment with your values and your morals and your sense of self. Breakups are always going to be hard, and we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about like ways in which you could do it differently, or like ways in which you can see breakups differently. And we're also going to talk a little bit about like the idea that you will always have to deal with things you don't like in your partners. But everything you listed in this letter seems like understandable reasons why you would come to the conclusion that this person is not for you. It's not always easy to determine that. Like, it's not always so black and white. But yeah, we're going to get into that in a little bit more. But first, we're going to take a very quick break.
All right, everyone, welcome back. Yeah, I think Sarah is absolutely right. Right before the ad break, in sort of talking about how breakups are always hard. And the reality is that I think lots of people who get broken up with are kind of blindsided by it because, you know, they're not involved in the inner world of their partner. And so, of course, it's like, wait a minute, what? I thought things were fine, right? And I think, you know, even in the examples you gave, you told them things about how they were behaving and acting that didn't feel good for you. And that's an indication that things aren't going right? Like, and just because they didn't pick up on it doesn't mean that they were blindsided, right? Or that you withheld until suddenly you broke up with them. Like, it sounds like you tried to have some conversations about their behavior or the ways that they were acting, and they just didn't hear it. Right. And they didn't know that it was an issue for you. And I think one of the things that we're going to talk about as we, you know, offer some love and support to you is going to be holding kind of two truths at the same time, which is that A, you had every right to break up with those people for the reasons that you broke up with them for, right? I wouldn't want to be with somebody who picks fights with my friends either, right? Like, I wouldn't want to be with somebody who thinks that feminists are bad and I have to teach them that they're not bad. Like, there's a lot of different things that you give as examples, which would be like, yeah, these feel like deal breakers to me. These feel like things that aren't changing, that aren't being helpful. And the second truth that we want to hold for ourselves is that relationships do involve a level of compromise and a level of flexing and adapting towards other people's preferred ways of being and operating in the world, right?
Right. Do you have any examples of that, like in your relationships or past relationships, that we can compare to the ones that are in the letter? Because it is tricky to, you know, parse out, am I making too big of a deal of this or whatever? Because we've all read those BuzzFeed articles that are like, oh, I broke up with my boyfriend because he breathes too loud, or because they're lactose intolerant. You know what I mean? Or maybe that's just us on our Patreon.
I think that might just be us on our Patreon. Yeah. You know, I think as an example, right? Like when Peter and I first started dating, I was like looking to move out of Minneapolis, and was like, I think that Minneapolis is like the smallest city that I would ever want to live in. And Peter was like, I don't want to live anywhere else that is further than 3 hours away from my family in northern Wisconsin. Right. And so one of the things that we had to figure out with each other was like, is this relationship worth me deciding that like moving somewhere else isn't an option and to be happy in Minneapolis? And the reality is that like, I didn't move because of my relationship with Peter and like maybe other reasons, but like that was a compromise that I had to make. And I think that one of the things that I think is important for us to think about as we're thinking about relationships is that sometimes that means that we have to decide that other people and their preferences are things that we need to take into account and that we need to be able to deal with them. And like, again, the examples that you gave, I think were all really understandable and justifiable reasons to break up with someone. But what I can hear you kind of saying is, I don't want people to change. I don't want to have to change myself. I just want to find like the perfect person who's going to be able to like fit into my lifestyle, and I'm never going to have to make a compromise, and we're always going to agree on everything. And that, my friend, is what is called an avoidant attachment style.
Ooh.
Yeah, we're throwing attachment styles in there.
Yeah, didn't
absolutely.
see that one coming.
Yeah. And again, like, we're not going to pathologize attachment styles. We're not going to say, oh my God, you need to fix this. You need to get over this. And I want to name that this is probably maybe a pattern for you, which is that like you're kind of looking for somebody who's going to perfectly fit into your life, that's not going to make you have compromises, and that you're constantly sort of like seeking this perfect person that's going to fit perfectly into your life, which is how folks with how folks with avoidant attachment styles kind of move through the world, right? They're avoidant because they're on the lookout for the person who's not going to make them compromise, who's not going to make them uncomfortable. And they have this idea that that perfect person exists out there. And so they have a hard time seeing the love and attachment that's being offered to them by people who aren't that perfect person.
You know, I didn't necessarily catch this from, I love that you pointed it out, because I think this is a great tool to look at our own internal patterns and our thinking. And Sam is right. You're going to have to deal with things you don't like. And I'll talk more about that later. But I'd actually, what I read from this letter was actually security, because a lot of times, you know, a secure person is one that doesn't want to change other people, but knows what their worth is, knows what their values are, knows what their comfort level is, and just is secure enough to say, this is a deal breaker for me. Like, you do you. I'm happy for you to do you. I'm just going to be over here and do me. What you said, Sam is probably right, period. Let's just say that. And I don't want to diminish, like I'm saying yes. And you remind me a lot of my spouse, actually, who just has this unshakable sense of who she is and uses that to navigate through relationships with what to me seems so, like, I would describe it as like blunt grace. Whereas like me, anxious, codependent, like not a strong sense of self, I'm always like fumbling what my feelings are. Whereas like people like you and my wife, like, you know what is important to you, and you know, like, in that unshakable sense of self also comes a person who knows that she doesn't want to be mistreated, knows that she doesn't want to let go of X, Y, and Z certain values. She also, in that sense of unshakable self, knows that other people have an inherent right to be themselves too. Don't get me wrong, all of everything I said right there aligns with an avoidant attachment style as well, because it's like, you do you, I'm going to do me. And I am never going to have to step aside of the bounds of my own values. But I think there's a yes and somewhere in the middle solution in here, because like Sam said, everything you listed in there, save maybe sleeping with a dog, in the bed with the dog, seems like really legitimate reasons to recognize that there's not a sustainable future, and that maybe this person isn't, you know, there are good people out there who aren't right for us. And it sounds like that's happening a lot here. You know, Sam and I had, if you want to chat quickly about the dog/feminist issue.
Yeah, when you were like, oh, I don't want a dog to sleep in the bed, or like, I want you to put the toaster in the cupboard, I was like, I think these are things we could maybe like think about compromising on. But then when you were like,
we could bend
and then he
towards
also wasn't
each other.
offensive. Yeah, absolutely. Like this, the fact that he wasn't a feminist and you had to teach him that, I was like, yeah, that feels like a deal breaker for me too.
Yeah,
like that
unattractive deal breaker. Yeah,
for sure. I get it. Like, I wouldn't want to be with this person either. But I think for me, it's kind of the way that you describe it, as like, I just kind of keep a list of things they're doing wrong. And then when that list hits the threshold, then I end the relationship, right? Like, that feels a little bit avoidant to me, right? And perhaps those reasons are really understandable and justifiable, but like, what I am offering you as a thing to think about, not to say that you're doing anything wrong or that like you need to change yourself immediately, but as a thing to think about is, what does it look like for you to talk about some of those things more, or to offer yourself, instead of saying like, oh, that person did that, and so now I'm like a little bit out of love with them. Can you practice some more curiosity around some of those things that maybe can offer, like Sierra said, more like blunt grace, right? Like more sort of like, oh, I can understand why this is happening. And it doesn't make me love you less. It just makes me understand you differently, right? That's all I'm offering. Not because I think that you shouldn't have broken up with these 3 people, because they sound like people worth breaking up with.
Yeah, they don't sound like they're for you. Right.
But I'm also just like, as a recovering avoidant person, like I'm seeing the signs in here, and I'm like, hey friend, as a recovering avoidant person, as what, like I'm seeing some of these patterns that I recognize in myself. So how can I help you to maybe see them and notice them and say, right, where can I be a little bit more flexible, a little bit more curious, and where can I make sure that I'm sort of standing in my firm values around some of the things that are important, like don't pick fights with my friends for no reason. Like that sounds fine to me. Like that's I would love that person less as well. Yeah.
If you want the toaster put away, you might have to be the person who puts the toaster away.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so you have to ask yourself about these quote deal breakers. Can I give here, or is this grading on my values, or is this grading on my true quality of life? Because putting the toaster away for your partner, hey, it might be annoying, but you'll do it because for the right person, you know?
Absolutely.
There's literally 300,000 things that my wife does for me like that, but I'll name one thing she doesn't do for me that I am annoyed by.
I love it. I love it.
True Gemini. My wife is like, when she empties the garbage, she doesn't put a bag back in. And so then I open the drawer to throw something away, and the garbage is empty. It's psychotic.
I can't believe that.
But what? I'm the one that has a wardrobe who never makes our bed, who is so bad at folding the laundry once it's clean. You know what I mean? Who doesn't put the dish in the dishwasher, who puts it in the sink. Even though the dishwasher's right there.
Sometimes. And it's uncomfortable.
But then not replacing a garbage bag, I just want to throttle her.
No, absolutely.
I will never say anything to her about this, because this is not... No. Does it make my life 1.7% more annoying? Yeah. Is it worth it?
No.
1,000 times. Yes, it's worth it. And you're going to have to find where you can bend and ebb and lean towards a mildly less peaceful life, right? A mildly less controlled life.
Yeah. Control.
You know, that's what it is. It's control, you know? But again, the things you listed to us, hey man, if you're a cold-hearted bitch, then so are we, because those things
sound
like pretty reasonable. I also want to say, like, I said this in the beginning, and so I'll expound upon it. All breakups are like upsetting.
Yeah.
And earlier when I said that my wife is like gracefully blunt, or bluntly graceful.
She's got blunt grace.
Blunt grace. There we go.
Yeah.
It's because sometimes she says things that are so secure and poignant to me that me, the tender little anxiously attached person, is like, my feelings. But she literally just like stated a fact. You know what I mean? Or like she was like, I feel like that's unfair. And I was like, how dare you, my feelings?
You know? Saying I'm a horrible person.
Yeah, I take it like to the max personal. But I want to point out that, like, even if you had told these partners a month before, hey, I'm thinking about breaking up, like, I guess what I'm trying to say is the person who's dumped is always going to not see it coming, or it's always not, you're always going to have not tried hard enough when there's a disparity in who wants the relationship to work or not. This is always going to happen. And yes, it's going to blindside us. And yes, it's going to hurt like hell. And yes, you're going to seem, you know what it is that, like, it's easier for us, the dumped, to paint you as a cold-hearted bitch than to acknowledge that you are a multifaceted human being who's put a lot of thought and nuanced care into making this decision. It's a lot easier for us to villainize you, to be like, fuck you, you never even gave us a chance, than for us to be like, wow, she thought about this a lot and this is the conclusion she came to. the conclusion she came to, even though I don't want her to come to this conclusion. Do you know what I mean?
For sure.
So you're always going to be flattened out in these situations. And honestly, I was talking to my wife about this letter beforehand, and she was like, unfortunately, this person is probably going to have to deal with this situation a lot because you're going to be the secure one who knows what they want. You know what I mean? Like,
for sure.
All right, my darling. I hope that this helps you. I feel like we've been talking for a really long time, but in a great way, in a fun way.
Absolutely.
I say just keep on keeping on, but be curious about the ways in which you can lean in your life. But also, there are people out there who long to have a sense of self the way that you have. And I'm one of them. I really like that you know who you are, know what you want, and don't want to change other people. That sounds very sustainable and harmonious to me. For sure. And at the same time, like Sam says, you can lean towards people. You can be curious about the ways in which you can adapt your life to fit the people who have earned the space in it, right?
Absolutely.
Not by being perfect, but by being of value to you in a mutually beneficial way.
Definitely. For sure.
Thank you so much for writing. We hope this helps.
We love you. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for listening. If you would like more content from us, or if you would like to access our monthly office hours, you can support us on Patreon. If you support us on Patreon for as little as $5 a month, you'll get an additional bonus weekly episode, as well as access to those office hours. That's patreon.com/justbreakuppod.
You can slide into our DMs, send us your favorite relationship memes, but most importantly, you can submit your questions about all matters of the heart at justbreakuppod.com, which is also where you can find our merchandise.
Please remember to like, follow, subscribe, give us a 5-star rating and review. This literally keeps our mics on and helps us reach more brokenhearted souls who need two random strangers giving them relationship advice.
Just Break Up is a production of Duvid Media, original music recording, all magical things by our good friend Spencer Worth Davis. Make sure to check out his podcast and his music. And remember, it's okay to have opinions about things that are in contrast to other people's desires. It's okay to break up with people, even if they want to be with you. That is part of the path. It doesn't make you a bad person. Their hurt is real, but your human agency and your right to your own life is real too. And if all else fails,
just break up.